My name is Chase Greenhouse Pasinger. I am currently a master's student at National University in the Performance and Sports Psychology program. Um, and today we are going to be talking about enhancing emotional control in leadership groups. So, some of the goals that I would like us to look at and to take from this presentation is to gain an understanding of what emotional control actually is and what that kind of looks like in leadership positions. Can certain levels of arousal have a positive effect on performance? I want to take a look at the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous center, and then I want to lastly take a look at the benefits of autogenic training. Emotional control, what is it? So, it can be defined as the act of controlling one's emotions or mood. I think this is pretty straightforward when we're talking about emotional control. It's having the ability to control one's emotions that come from certain stimulus. That stimulus can be negative or positive, but it's a stimulus that invokes a reaction within us. With emotional control inside of leadership groups, I think a lot of this is tied to anxiety and performance, and basically it's tied to the anxiety of performing at a high level, performing with people always scrutinizing and looking at you for the work that you do or do not do. Now, within leadership positions, I believe that it's vital that we take a look at emotional control because a lot of the time, those that are in leadership positions or that have climbed the corporate ladder or that are people that are coaches or CEOs or those that are considered the elite of an organization, they tend to suppress a lot of their emotions. This, in my mind, is not an effective way to deal with emotions and the things that force emotions to come out of us. When you suppress emotions, you don't internalize it, and you also cannot reap the benefits of those emotions, in my opinion. And there are some benefits that we can find that we'll discuss later on in other slides. Below you will find the definition for arousal. Arousal can be defined as something that causes emotion or excitement. So, what we were talking about in the previous slide, things that elicit or push these reactions out of us would be considered things that arouse us. Now, when talking about arousal in leadership positions, I believe that there is a necessary fit for arousal. And what I mean by that is that arousal is not completely negative, even though there's a negative connotation attached to it, or there may be a negative connotation attached to it. Being aroused by something can elicit a state of hyper focus, of hyper attention to the details. These things can produce higher levels of performance. The greatest example of this, I always like to use the context of basketball. And the player that I always like to use is Draymond Green from the Golden State Warriors. Draymond is known as the lifeblood of the Warriors because he's emotional, it's raw emotion, it comes out of him, sometimes unchecked. But the positive of this is that it allows, one, his teammates to gravitate towards being more engaged in the game, taking a higher interest in the game, but it also focuses himself and his teammates. And this can produce a state within the team, within an individual, that pushes the limits of performance. I believe that there has to be a level of arousal, and it has to be a high level of arousal to kind of push the limits of performance. When we have in our minds things that, such as that we cannot perform at a certain level, that it's impossible for us to do that, levels of arousal also can help us get around those roadblocks. Because, like I stated earlier, it can enhance the way that you go about it, the emotional tie to what it is that you are doing, meaning that you are going to take a higher interest in it, and that means that you are you may have more motivation to complete the task that you are doing. So, what does emotional control look like in leadership populations? To the right, you'll see a picture of a hand that says self control. And then in the fingers, it says balance, calmness, determination, confidence, and willpower. These are all the attributes that allow us to exert control over ourselves, so self control, or over our emotions and or mood. So the first one, remain balanced. This is very important, to remain balanced, to remain neutral at times, and not allow emotions to take over, especially in leadership. In leadership positions, people are looking to you to remain even, to remain in a neutral stance in some situations. They don't expect you to be too high. They don't expect you to be too low. So we use the example on the last slide about Draymond Green. So to me, there needs to be a level of arousal. So remaining balanced is fine, and remaining neutral is fine, but understanding how to control one's arousal to enhance performance is more effective, but you also have to make sure that you remain balanced. The greatest example of this is Draymond Green. He is the lifeblood of the Warriors, but at times his emotions, his raw emotions, gets him into trouble. The greatest example of that is in the finals when he kicked LeBron James and was suspended for Game 6, a pivotal game, and the Warriors end up losing the series. So this isn't a great example of not remaining balanced or not being able to control your arousal to the level that enhances it, and this can be a detriment to performance. Now, the second one that I chose to emphasize was to remain calm. It is very important that we remain calm and clear-headed when making decisions as leaders, because you have to understand that you have others that look to you to make those decisions, and the decisions that you make will have ramifications not only for yourself but the people that you are leading. And I think this is where a lot of the anxiety is tied to, because decisions such as these have so much weight to them that leadership positions in organizations have difficulty coping with the anxiety that comes along with it. With that being said, remaining calm is an effective tool to make sure that we are keeping our emotions in check. But again, we need to make sure that we continue to have a certain level of arousal in order to push our performance. Third, I chose to emphasize remain confident. Confidence and also having efficacy in your ability to perform a specific task is paramount. And that is because if you go into a situation as a leader with confidence that you know that you can do this, that you know that you can accomplish that, and you exude that, then that is contagious. And we see this from NBA coaches, we see this from organizational leaders. When they have the confidence in the direction that they are moving, people tend to follow. And that's why a lot of the time they've been placed in that position to lead. Lastly, I chose to emphasize willpower. Willpower is something that I equate it as drive. It is one's drive, it's one's will to succeed, to overcome, and this cannot be taught, in my opinion. This is something that's innate and within us, and it can come out of us in unique situations. But once you learn how to harness your willpower, how to use it to enhance, you can become a more effective leader. Now, I believe it's important that also we take a look at the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system are two divisions of the autonomic nervous center. Now, the autonomic nervous center is what regulates our bodies, unconscious actions. It can be things such as our flight or flight responses, meaning that when we are in certain situations, our body tends to either fight or to flee. Um, or it can be our what they call homeostasis state, where it's resting, it's sleeping, all of the things that kind of invoke peace within us. So the parasympathetic nervous center is what we just talked about, that homeostasis feeling of peace, of relaxation. Our sympathetic nervous system is basically tied to our flight or flight responses. So the goal in all of this, and especially when we're talking about emotional control and leadership or just emotional control in general, is to minimize the effect of the sympathetic nervous center and activate the parasympathetic nervous center. The best way, in my opinion, to do so is through autogenic training. Now, the best way, in my opinion, to ensure that we have control over our emotions, our mood, and also to make sure that we are exerting a level of self control within our leadership positions and not allowing the anxiety to consume us is through autogenic training. So, autogenic training is relaxation techniques that take place, and this can be done either with a sports consultant. I know other therapists utilize autogenic training, and what it is, it's lying down or sitting up or sitting in a certain position and rhythmic breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, visualization, and meditation. So there are many benefits to autogenic training. Just to kind of cite some of them, one, that it keeps your stress level down, and that's what we were talking about. Allowing ourselves to relax, to remain even, to control our mood. So keeping those stress levels down before we go into a highly tense situation, which could be for leaders and organization, basketball organizations or sports organizations, a game, a draft. In the business domain, it could be board meetings, it could be presentations where you are facilitating and training others, or it could be in the and far. We can look at it through the lens of the high risk domain. Going into a situation for a police officer making a traffic stop, or any of the other high risk situations that you can think of that go along with that profession. Um, Also, it's very important because it helps us improve the function of our brain, and there is some research to support that. It increases our immunities, uh, and it helps our metabolism, and it helps us overall increase our focus. And that's the main thing that I think we can pull out of autogenic training and relaxation techniques, is that it can enhance your focus. So, a great example of this and how we could utilize autogenic training in, we'll choose the business domain, is we could take a leadership person or a person that has ascended to a high level in the organization, and they are having anxiety about an upcoming presentation with all of the board members because their job is riding on it. Right? So, with autogenic training, what we can do first, with the first component I want to kind of look at, is the visualization component of autogenic training. Now, with visualization in the context of the scenario I gave you, we could have them sit down and and visualize what it would feel like to walk into the room when all the eyes are on them. What it's going to feel like when they know their boss, their huge CEO, is going to be looking at them and scrutinizing every word that comes out of their mouth. What is it going to look like and feel like when you are presenting and you mess up and you misspeak? So all of that helps them prepare. It helps them formulate what it's going to feel like, what it's going to look like. And then where we step in as consultants is we can allow them to one, see all of those components of it, but also plan for how to deal with those issues. So that's one of the many benefits of visualization that I want to emphasize. As far as the focus portion of it, the other part that I really wanted to emphasize with autogenic training, this can help people in leadership because it will focus their energy, their attention to the sole one thing that they are having an issue with. And if we can divert all of that negative energy and make something positive out of it, and to change, or to use a better term, reframe that mindset of theirs, and to be able to allow them to see it in a different light, what this allows them to do and what this can facilitate is authentic growth in that area, which also promotes efficacy, which also promotes confidence, which overall enhances their ability to control their emotions when something goes wrong in a presentation, which allows them to control the mood when something is when stimulus is consistent and it is having a negative effect on them. It allows them to exert a measure of control over the situation. And that's how we want to kind of phrase it, in my opinion. But in actuality, what they are doing is exerting a measure of control over themselves. Because a lot of the times we don't have control over the situation, even though that's what we believe. We are actually emphasizing the control over ourselves and not allowing the circumstances or the situations to dictate what it is that we are doing, what it is that we are saying. So these are some of the benefits that we can find with autogenic training.